The story begins in a Siberian camp where hundreds of Germans were kept as prisoners. Strangely, there were no guards for security, yet no one dared to escape. In reality, even if someone did manage to get away, they wouldn't survive more than a few days in the bone-chilling cold of the Arctic Circle. But there was one soldier who desperately wanted to escape and return to his wife and daughter. His name was Forell, and one day, he finally got his chance. At night, he secretly climbed into a coal wagon, and when the train started moving, he was overjoyed to see the starry sky. But suddenly, the train stopped in the middle of the journey. Clemens quietly got out to see what was happening, when a Soviet soldier spotted him. He was caught and locked inside a pigsty. Heavy rain began pouring down, but despite this, Clemens stayed there for 3 days without food or water. After that, the prison warden released him, saying, "Your comrades are waiting for you." When Clemens reached the tunnel, he saw his fellow prisoners waiting for him, furious and armed with weapons. His escape attempt had caused all of them to be starved for 3 days. Suddenly, they attacked Clemens and beat him like a dog. Badly injured, he was taken to the camp's doctor, who was also a prisoner. The doctor was impressed by his courage to try to escape. He told Clemens that escaping the Arctic Circle was nearly impossible, everyone who had tried before had died. But then he revealed a secret: those who didn't escape would also eventually die. All the prisoners were forced to work daily in lead mines, and the poisonous lead was slowly entering their bodies through the air. It was only a matter of time before it killed them all. So, the doctor advised Clemens to take his chances and escape. He gave him all his warm clothes and boots, and told him that food was hidden at different spots along the railway lines. On top of that, the doctor even gave Clemens a gun. In fact, the doctor had made all these preparations for his own escape. But a month earlier, he had found out that he had cancer, and even if he escaped, he wouldn't live for more than a month. So, the doctor gave Clemens his lunchbox and said, "If you succeed, please inform my family of my death." That night, Clemens escaped once again. The next morning, the warden got the news that Clemens had fled, so he came to question the doctor. But by then, the doctor had sacrificed his life. Meanwhile, Clemens was pressing forward with all his strength, facing the snow and the fierce wind. The warden sent several soldiers to find him, but even after searching for many days, they couldn't find a trace of Clemens. Everyone thought he must have frozen to death in the snow, but the warden was convinced he was alive, so he ordered the search to continue. 9 days after his escape, Clemens suddenly saw a sled chasing him from behind. He immediately started running, but the sled quickly caught up to him and ran him over. Suddenly, his eyes opened, and Clemens realized he was perfectly fine. It had all been a hallucination. All around him was nothing but a blanket of white snow, and his food was completely gone. His spirit sank, and he prayed to God for a miracle. But in the vast Arctic Circle, there was nothing in sight except endless snow. He had no other option, so he kept moving forward for a few more days as best he could. Eventually, his body gave out, and he collapsed from hunger. After some time, he regained consciousness and heard a strange sound. His eyes suddenly caught sight of a seal, and he lit up with hope. Clemens quickly took out his gun and, with trembling hands, fired at the seal, but unfortunately, not a single shot hit. The seal began to escape, so Clemens chased after it. Suddenly, it plunged into the icy water. Without thinking too much, he fired again and finally managed to kill it. After eating the meat, he wrapped his feet with bandages to get some relief from the cold. After a short rest, Clemens resumed his journey. On such a long and lonely path, his mind could easily lose balance, so he constantly talked to himself along the way. Along the way, Clemens would check his compass after walking a bit to make sure he didn't lose his direction. After many days of walking like this, he finally saw a tree standing in the middle of the snow. Overjoyed, Clemens ran toward it and hugged it tightly. This tree meant that after 2 months of continuous walking, he had finally crossed out of the Arctic Circle. Meanwhile, the prison warden still hadn't given up and ordered a search of a 500-kilometer area. Clemens had reached a forest, but suddenly a fierce snowstorm began. The storm was so violent that even huge trees were uprooted and fell. As Clemens got up, a large tree suddenly fell on him. Luckily, 2 men named Semjon and Mattern, who were there searching for gold, saved his life. The 3 of them continued on together. Slowly, the weather began to improve, and they decided to make a makeshift boat to cross a river. During the journey, the 3 of them shared stories of their lives, but soon the river's current became dangerously strong. Clemens and Mattern struggled to control the boat. Suddenly, Semjon lost his balance and fell into the river. Just as Semjon was about to drown, Clemens, without caring for his own life, dived into the water. After a great struggle, he managed to pull Semjon to the shore. Meanwhile, Mattern abandoned them midway and went ahead alone. When he reached his hut, he assumed Semjon had drowned, so he stole Semjon's gold and other valuables. But just moments later, Semjon and Clemens arrived there. Furious at Mattern's betrayal, Semjon shot and killed him. After that, Semjon and Clemens packed their belongings and set off once again. Soon, winter began, and moving forward became even more difficult. Clemens tried to ease Semjon's burden by carrying his bag, but Semjon thought Clemens was trying to steal his gold. In anger, Semjon attacked Clemens with his bag, knocking him unconscious. When Clemens regained consciousness, he saw a pack of wolves running toward him. Clemens tried to climb a tree, but wolves started pulling him down by his pants. After much struggle, the small tree he was clinging to fell, and now death stood right before him. Suddenly, the loud sound of gunfire rang out, killing all the wolves. It was the shepherds of the area who had saved his life. They took Clemens to their village, where many shepherds treated his injuries. Thanks to their help, his body soon recovered completely, and after so long, he was overjoyed to meet people again. He even became friends with many of the shepherds. But soon, a notice sent by the prison warden also reached the village. It stated that anyone sheltering Clemens would be put to death. Reluctantly, Clemens had to leave. Before he left, the shepherds gifted him plenty of food and a hunting dog. Now, on his journey home, he had a companion, so he didn't feel alone. In this way, the two of them traveled together for almost a year. One day, they reached a sawmill, where his dog ran off in search of food. Some workers chased the dog away, but when Clemens approached, they recognized him. The mill owner fed him and then put him on a train bound for Germany. Now, he was finally close to home, and a wide smile spread across his face. But he didn't know that the mill owner had informed the police, and the prison warden was waiting at the train station with his soldiers. Fortunately, Clemens spotted the soldiers at the station in advance, so he seized the moment and ran. But just moments later, the prison warden caught him red-handed. All hope seemed lost, until suddenly, his hunting dog attacked the warden, biting him badly. Thanks to his dog's loyalty, Clemens had one more chance to escape. But then he heard gunshots and realized the warden had killed his dog. He didn't even have time to mourn its death. Clemens kept running, and when the moment was right, he climbed onto a bridge and jumped onto a moving train passing below. Once again, he had narrowly escaped. Clemens kept moving forward on his path. Time passed, and the year 1952 arrived. By then, he had neither a single penny to his name nor a bite of food to eat. While wandering through a fair, he saw delicious food on display, but the shopkeeper shooed him away. As he kept walking, he came across a pancake stall where two girls greeted him. However, since he had no money, he sadly walked away. But one kind-hearted girl felt pity for him and broke off a piece of pancake, giving it to a child to hand over to Clemens. At first, Clemens hesitated, but then he accepted the pancake and ate it. Meanwhile, a Jewish man had been watching the whole scene. As Clemens walked further, he entered a church and folded his hands in prayer. The Jewish man followed him there, but instead of handing him over to the police, he approached him. It turned out that the man had also been a war prisoner once, so he could understand the condition of Clemens. He took Clemens to his home, where Clemens bathed and regained his former appearance. The Jewish man then gave him a passport and some documents, which deeply touched his heart. Finally, with the passport in hand, Clemens reached the Soviet border. After a brief questioning, he was allowed to pass. But then, in the distance, Clemens saw something that made his heart sink. The warden was there. He turned around and realized he was still on Soviet soil, which meant the warden could still arrest him. All the hope built up over years of struggle suddenly felt like it was slipping away. But then, unexpectedly, the warden stepped aside from his path. Clemens could hardly believe his eyes, but he slowly moved forward. The truth was, his sheer will to live and the courage it took to survive a 7-year, painful journey had won the warden's respect. That was why he let Clemens go. As a soldier, the warden still felt he had won, because if he had wanted to, he could have ended Clemens's journey right there. At last, Clemens crossed the border and reached home, where his wife and daughter were just leaving for church. Clemens followed behind them, and inside the church, his daughter recognized him, and she ran straight into her father's arms. The story ends here.